Hey everyone, Attorney Davis Yance here. Listen, there's been a lot in the news over the last week or so about the big, beautiful bill proposed by President Trump and passed in the House. It is a budget reconciliation bill. We'll talk about what that means a little more in a minute, but just understand that there's been a lot of controversy about this. This is partly responsible for Elon Musk and President Trump having a very public tiff. So what I want to do is I want to do this in a reaction video format. There is a news clip that I haven't watched yet that is from a liberal media source talking about the controversy over the bill. So we're just going to watch it together. I'm going to react to it. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you detailed analysis of why conservatives are either for or opposing this bill, and just a couple of other things to understand about why we're even using the reconciliation process in the first place. So here we go. Let's start with the news coverage of this with George Stephanopoulos. This is a fun way to start this. So here we go.
Elon Musk is stepping up his attacks, calling on his supporters to help kill the bill, projected to add more than $2 trillion to the national debt. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott at the White House. Good morning, Rachel.
So $2 trillion to the national debt. That's true. This bill, according to the budget office, is going to raise the national debt approximately $2 or $2.5 trillion over the next decade. So that is true. That is accurate analysis so far. Here we go.
Rachel.
Hey, George, good morning to you. And Elon Musk is not backing down. He's now launched a pressure campaign against this bill as the president is pushing senators to get behind it.
This morning, a growing rift between the president and Elon Musk, the architect behind the massive shakeups that marked Trump's first 100 days. The billionaire who spent more than $270 million of his own money to help get the president and other Republicans elected.
All right, I just want to pause and note that real quick. Listen to what they said, that Elon Musk is the architect behind President Trump's first 100 days. I don't care what side you come down on the Musk-Trump controversy. I don't think that's true. He's been a factor. He has helped. He's been an advisor, but he's certainly not been the architect of this. So it's just interesting coverage. Looking, I think, to try to I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to be favorable to Musk or Trump on this, but they're definitely adding information in there that I don't think is entirely accurate. So here, let's keep going.
Called Trump's signature budget bill a disgusting abomination. Musk now ramping up the pressure, writing, "Call your senator, call your congressman. Bankrupting America is not okay. Kill the bill." Musk warning about the level of spending in the bill, which the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates will add $2.4 trillion to the national debt. Sources tell us he also expressed frustration that the bill cuts the electric vehicle tax credit, which benefits owners of electric vehicles, including Tesla, and that he personally pushed senior lawmakers, including Speaker Mike Johnson, to keep it in.
So that's interesting. There's controversy about whether or not Elon Musk actually asked for that. There's also, some controversy out there where Elon was saying, I don't care about that tax cuts, end all of the subsidies, end oil and gas and other subsidies, and cut the EV tax credits as well. I don't care. That's not what I'm most concerned about. That's an interesting thing. I don't think we've really gotten to the truth on that yet, but that's an interesting piece of this.
Johnson telling reporters the president was not pleased by those comments from Musk.
He's, as you know, he's not delighted that Elon did a 180 on that, but look, I don't know what happened in 24 hours. Everybody can draw their own conclusions about that.
Other Republicans pushing back.
He's one man. He's not my constituent. He's not even a donor that I know of. So, he's one guy.
Give us some productive feedback that we can operate on. I can't operate on platitudes, or I can't respond.
The president meeting with key senators at the White House, urging them to pass the package, which extends the 2017 Trump-era tax cuts, sets aside nearly $50 billion to resume construction on the border wall, and pushes work requirements for Medicaid. By some estimates, the changes to Medicaid would force 11 million Americans to lose their health insurance over 10 years. Jesus Acosta is his mom's.
All right, so we're going to stop it there, and that's probably where we're going to end our commentary from the video, because I think that kind of outlines where we're at. I don't think we need to see any more of what they're going to go into. So again, a lot of that was fairly accurate coverage up to the point where it talks about Medicare cuts. What's really at issue in this bill for Medicare cuts is a work requirement. In other words, you can't just be on welfare indefinitely and receive Medicare. You actually have to get a job if you're able. So that would work. That would result in cuts. The other cuts to Medicare that are in this bill relate to illegal immigrants not being eligible to receive Medicare or not being eligible to receive health care through Medicare. So I just want to take a step back for a moment. We're going to talk about why some conservatives support this, why others don't, but I also want to outline why we're even in this mess in the first place. So again, we can't just pretend like this is the first time we've ever had a budget reconciliation bill. This isn't the first time we've had all of these issues to come out. So what the Trump White House is dealing with is decades and decades of absolutely out of control government spending, where Congress and the United States government treat the American taxpayers like a piggy bank, and there is no fiscal responsibility at all. So I am absolutely sympathetic for those that oppose this bill on grounds that it is going to increase federal spending, that we need to get federal spending under control. But understand, we have created an absolutely absurd system in the United States where we don't rationally fund programs and we don't rationally fund our government, because what we do every single year is we engage in budget brinksmanship, where we have this issue where we're coming up against the debt ceiling and we really don't ever pass a real budget bill. We just do extensions and other things. It makes it really, really difficult for permanent things to get done when it comes to cutting the deficit. I think some of it oftentimes is intentional, and you have to ask who benefits from it. But what we're dealing with right now isn't anything more than what's called a reconciliation bill. It's called a reconciliation bill because it's only related to the budget, and it can be passed in the House. The House passes it. They have done that. It goes to the Senate. The Senate can make amendments to it, or they can pass the House's version. They're not going to pass the House's version. They are going to make amendments. And then, believe it or not, it goes back to the House, and the House can either decide to just adopt the Senate amendments. If they reject any of the Senate amendments, then it goes to a conference committee. They meet and they come up with an agreed upon piece of legislation, a reconciliation bill that then goes back to both houses with essentially agreed upon approval and then gets sent to the president. The reason they're using reconciliation is because it is a type of legislation that cannot be filibustered in the Senate. They change the Senate rules all the time. You only need a simple majority to pass it. There are 47 Democrats in the United States Senate right now that would likely vote against this. And if they tried to filibuster it, you have to have 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. So they could delay this passage indefinitely if it was done by anything other than reconciliation. So if this bill is not passed, then we will continue moving forward with budget brinksmanship. Sometime in the middle of the year, we'll hit the debt ceiling again, and there will be this whole controversy over, are we going to shut down the federal government, or are they going to pass some sort of temporary spending measure? So that's why we're doing a reconciliation bill. There are a lot of people, and I agree with them philosophically. I agree with them fundamentally on the principles, and that would be people like Thomas Massie and Rand Paul. However, we are in a practical mess. So let's look at practically what this bill does, and let's look at a few reasons why some conservatives support this bill. So as a starting point, this bill would make permanent the 2017 Trump tax cuts. So the tax cuts that we experienced during the first Trump administration would become permanent. If they are not made permanent, they will expire this year, and there will be a 22% tax hike, on the average taxpayer. If it is passed and the tax cuts are permanent, that will keep in about a $1,700 savings and will deliver up to $13,300 in take-home pay for families with 2 children. So there is this idea that these tax cuts need to be made permanent. That's a part of this. Also, if this passes, Trump would make good on campaign promises to end taxes on tips and overtime pay. So those would be good things. The reason that there's also a deduction that would impact small businesses, that would create some investment incentives for small businesses, and they could take higher tax cuts. So there's a lot of pro-growth, think sort of Chamber of Commerce folks that would be supporting it for this reason. Now, this also does provide, and they talked about this in the news article, it does provide almost $50 billion for border wall construction and $150 billion for immigration enforcement. So if you're a conservative and the border wall and immigration enforcement matters, and it should matter to all of us, That's a part of this reconciliation bill. That would be a reason to support it. There are other things related to what are considered pro-family agendas. One of those is defunding Planned Parenthood and reversing Medicaid coverage for gender transition procedures for minors. So just think about this. If this bill passes in its current form, it would fully defund Planned Parenthood. No more federal tax dollars to fund Planned Parenthood, and by virtue of that, fund abortion, because that's what Planned Parenthood does. It would also end Medicaid coverage for gender transition procedures, so gender mutilation of minors. It would end federal funding for that. Those would be huge things. There are a whole lot of conservative Republicans that are supporting this legislation because of that provision alone. Now, the other thing that it does is it does help with some energy deregulation, and this would help with oil, gas production, and some other innovations there that the government says will spur tax growth. It also has $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Again, this stuff I'm not going to go into in detail. This is the shell game that they play with the budgets. It's like, okay, it increases the deficit, 2.4 trillion over the next 10 years, but in 30 years, it will result in savings of $1.6 trillion. All of that is shell games when we're talking about a broken budgeting system. It feels like the government plays with monopoly money anyway. So I think really focus on the practical things. Makes permanent the tax cuts, has incentives for families, additional child tax credits for families. It helps small businesses. It helps with border enforcement. And absolutely, it would result in ending federal funding for Planned Parenthood, as well as Medicaid's coverage for gender transition surgeries for minors. Now, why are so many conservative Republicans, people like Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, and others, Chip Roy, that I like and often support against it? The bottom line is it feels fiscally irresponsible because it is absolutely filled with pork. It is, for the most part, business as usual in DC. It's an absolutely rushed process, 1,100 pages of legislation without the time to actually read it. Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about the fact that there was something in the bill she didn't even know was there, and it would change her perspective on supporting it or not. There are some other concerns that there will be a backlash because of these Medicaid cuts. That would be one reason, maybe not a conservative reason to opposing it, but there are some senators who are questioning that. And there's this idea that we're not bringing in the DOGE cuts in this bill. And I'll submit to you, this bill may not be a good place to do some of that because it is a reconciliation bill. So I have deep, deep concerns. I am absolutely fundamentally opposed to the way we do budgeting in the federal government now. Anyway, that's a broken system. It's absolutely fiscally irresponsible. No other organization in the world would do that. It leads to inflation. It punishes the American people. Taxes are way too high. But I do think there are things about this reconciliation bill that are a recognition of reality. I hate this concept that, pass the bill and then you can read it, or pass the bill and then we'll bring the DOGE cuts later. But I will submit to you, something has to be done about the debt ceiling and the brinksmanship for the debt ceiling. If this ends the brinkmanship for the debt ceiling for the rest of the year, and so Congress can actually focus on bringing in real cuts to government and real tax cuts and other things, then that would be a reason to support this. So I'm not going to give you my final opinion on this other than to say, praise God, we're seeing the potential for the ending of federal funding for abortions through Planned Parenthood, and also gender transition surgeries for minors through cuts to Medicaid. That would be a huge accomplishment, however it's done. I hope you like this. I hope it was interesting. Feel free to comment, ask me questions, and put in the comments other things you'd like to talk about in these reaction videos. Thanks. Take care.